you all for joining us. The topic of this panel is South Asia in is communication. Is communication for the greater good in South Asia. It will run from 10:30 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. For those viewing on YouTube live stream, welcome. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat feature at any time. We will compile them and ask as many as possible to our panelists during the Q&A. The panel leader, Dr. Eleni Stein, will invite each person to speak, after which she'll run a Q&A with the panelists. Please remember that if you are not speaking, to mute your microphone. Now I would like to introduce the panel leader, Dr. Eleni Stein, Associate Professor, Journalism Area Head of Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Oklahoma. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning from cloudy and gray Norman in Oklahoma, where we are kind of conducting classes for the second week, sort of online, but also in person. We have had a brief discussion in our breakout room about how COVID is impacting us in different ways in different parts of the world. But here we are going on with life as usual, kind of. Doing our research, doing our teaching, and today we will hear from several of our speakers how they are changing the world and how their organizations are contributing to a better life for several people in their communities. So as Rebecca had said, the topic for our panel today is communication for the greater good. And we have three panelists who will be joining us from different parts in South Asia. I will briefly introduce each of them, and they will have about 7 to 8 minutes to speak on their topic. And when they're done, we will ask the questions that we have compiled in the chat. And we will have as much discussion as time allows us or as we would like to have while we are in this session. So our first speaker is Dr. Shruti Nair. She's the communication and impact evaluation expert at Ashoka in India. And she is going to be our first speaker. So Shruti, thank you very much for joining us, and we would like to hear more from you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Stein. It's lovely to be here. Very happy to be part of the conference. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm Dr. Shruti Nair. I work with an organization called Ashoka, and I lead the youth program for Ashoka in South Asia. I'll just set the context a bit about what we do at Ashoka, and then jump right into how we are using communication for the greater good in the region. So Ashoka is one of the largest networks of social entrepreneurs in the world. Our founder, Mr. Bill Drayton, who started the organization in 1980 to support world's leading social entrepreneurs. In fact, Bill coined the word social entrepreneurship, and he spent a lot of time in his youth years with Vinoba Bhave from India, who was deeply fascinated with the ideology of witnessing a powerful idea in the hands of a system-changing entrepreneur. If we go back in time, the Bhudan movement, which started in India, had a deep impact on Bill, and that's how the entire journey of social entrepreneurship started. So for us at Ashoka, a social entrepreneur is someone who is from deep within committed for the good of all, and so is his or her work. And social entrepreneurship really is about bringing a fundamental change in a pattern or a mindset to address existing social problem at a systems level. So our main role at Ashoka in the last 40 years has been to select some of the most inspiring social entrepreneurs of the world. We have a network of about 4,000 social entrepreneurs across 92 countries, and we support them by awarding them the Ashoka Fellowship. And we're still continuing to look for entrepreneurs who we believe have ideas that are historic and are setting a force in motion. So now what we've learned from our work with social entrepreneurs is that we need to empower everybody and transform the world from where only a few people lead to a world where everyone leads. And we believe that would be an everyone a change maker world, which is the vision of our organization. our single-minded mission now is to support inspiring social entrepreneurs and work with society as a whole to create in everyone a change maker world. Um, and I think, working with social entrepreneurs, one of the things that we've realized is we've noticed these historical trends, right? And we have noticed that over three-quarters of our fellows have changed the patterns in their field, be it environment, be it human rights, be it village resiliency, right within 5 years. Over half of them have changed national policy in the same 5 years. And with decades of working with these fellows, we have realized that we to have a world where everyone leads and everyone is a change. Our Ashoka fellows started in their teen years between the age of 12 and 20. And
I think we have lost Shruti there for a second.
Yes.
Let's give her a moment. Maybe she comes back. If she doesn't, then Ulla, I will go to you and you can start with your presentation. And then when Shruti has her connectivity back, we can continue with her discussion. So let's give her a minute or so and let's see if her connectivity comes back. Okay, I think let's move on. And when we do get her back, we can have her continue her discussion. Our second panelist is Dr. Muhammad Sahid Ullah from the University of Chittagong in Bangladesh. He will talk about scholarly engagement for South Asian communication and media researchers, and he will talk about some of the problems and opportunities that we face as researchers in this area. So, Dr. Ullah, we would be happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Helene, for your introduction. Good morning. Good morning from the USA and from good evening from the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, because we are living in two different worlds right now. Someone just experience the morning and some others experience in the evening. So my presentation is scholarly engagement for South Asian communication media researchers, problems and opportunities. I would like to give some sort of examples that I share with you right now. Here, the Professor Krishnamurthy Sri Ramesh from the University of Colorado Boulder, in his editorial of the Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly, 97, just published last month, said that South Asia and Southeast Asia have contributed quite. Do you hear me? I'm not sure that. South Asia and Southeast Asia have contributed quite significant to the body of knowledge of journalism and mass communication and allied discipline, especially since the 1980s. These two regions have produced many thoughts, leaders, while also attracting non-native scholars to conduct research in and learn from their rich diversity. Since 1990, he just found out the 10 articles published in Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly exploring the media environment from South and Southeast Asian region in depth. They are testing Western theories in Asian context. From 10 articles, only 4 are from South Asia, covering Bangladesh and India, 1 on television autonomy, others are 3 on development, journalism and agenda setting theory. None of those authors living in their respective countries. All of those are living in the US. Then another journal from the Europe, the International Journal of International Communication Gazette, during 83 years of its journey, Only 4 research articles have appeared on Bangladesh, and 3 of those authors are Bangladeshi diasporas living in the US. 3 observations by communication and media research scholars. K.P. Nagras, who is from India, he supervised more than 50 PhD scholars during his tenure of the professorship, and he says that a sea change is required. We are 30 to 40 years behind in the context of communication research. Another Professor Jan Sarvais, a noted development communication scholar from Europe, with him I worked in a paper competition last year. He said during the evaluation that over the last 30 years, media and communication research trends in South Asia remains stagnant. That was in the early 80s, I observed, he said. Then another one, Professor A.D. Q, editor of Asian Journal of Communication, one of the reputed journal from Asia. And whenever I was attending in editors meeting during First World Journalism Education Congress in 2007, during that time he said that 90% of submission, though not much submission sensed, indeed he has got immediate or instant rejection due to methodological flaws. So that though these kind of things disappointed me a lot, my personal experience with Media Asia, a special issue on Bangladesh in 2009, during the review process, reviewers mentioned for the rejections are methodologically drawbacks. Most of the submissions is descriptive, had infatuated with the insufficient analysis. I have got this experience during in my association with this journal at the last stage. And why these kind of things, or the research in JMC or journalism and mass communication educators in South Asia actually sense these kind of things, and what is the present situation of journalism education and research here in South Asia? 7 countries have in near about 1,200 journalism schools and training institutions across South Asia. Entry of 3rd generation of communication and media educators and researchers. I myself consider my as 2nd generation. 1st generation has already almost at the retirement stage. And 1st and 2nd generation of JMC educators and researchers concentrated their studies by using descriptive and quantitative research. They couldn't avail exposure to methodologically and analytically sound research. New generation uses both quantitative and qualitative research methods simultaneously and starts publication in Scopus Rank Journal. The new generation got ample opportunities to conduct quality research. The problem that I identified during 2 conferences here, the research is sporadic and isolated, no relation or integration with the social needs. Secondly, enlightened with the NGO-related project work with descriptive, not academic research or with analysis. Want of integration of media and communication research with sociology and anthropology. Inadequate research grant for research work. Want of recognition from the university and institutions where they are working for. The problems identified still, not enough journals from this region or in absence of quality journals from this region. Western theory and media method bias, want of sincere effort to research work or want of dedication to the research work. Intruders in the research work, that means co-authorship is very dangerous test for this region. No special recognition for our research work. But all these problems, we have some sort of hopes and opportunities. 1st and 2nd generation had no access to the world reputed journals, and 3rd generation gets access to any journals through the university or higher education commission or university grants commission website of their respective countries throughout the region. Exposure to the Western notion of knowledge, university education provides some scope for the new generation in engaging them in qualitative research. Scholars who couldn't pursue their higher degree from the developed countries, as they publish a lot of low quality journals, even some of those journals are blacklisted by IMCR and blame those for plagiarism. Young and the 3rd generation of journalism and mass communication educators intend to go abroad to pursue their higher degree from the West, which is good trend. They can shoulder the responsibilities to produce quality research that will contribute to society betterment.
Dr. Ruwa, 1 minute.
Okay. And who will start PhD? The way out, who will start PhD in home countries may read thoroughly books on research methodology, both qualitative and quantitative thoroughly. Go through some qualitative research article from reputed journals on media and communication. It dedicates their time and efforts to quality research and never use research and publication as only platform for the promotion, but take it as a passion. I feel this, if we do these kind of things, then the research trend in the third generation of media and communication researchers from the South Asia can be overcome. Thank you very much for listening me.
Wow, and you were done before I could even stop you. So
Thank you. Just within 1 minute.
that doesn't happen often in a conference session. Thank you very much. So now we have Dr. Nair back with us. So Shruti, if you want to continue where you have left off, thank you for coming back, and we would like to hear more from you.
Thank you, Dr. Steen. I'm sorry about the seem to have some connectivity issue. So just a quick recap. So we were talking about how Ashoka Fellows have changed systems across the world, and one of the we have been very fortunate at Ashoka to learn from some of these patterns that from the social entrepreneurs work across the world. And one of them that we have, one of the very sort of key patterns that we've noticed is that majority of our fellows started through their teen years, which is between the age of 12 and 20. And we realized that the Ashoka Fellows found their inner power to bring change much earlier in life. And we realized that like any other skills, the skill set and the mindset of a change maker is also developed at a very young age. So essentially what we mean by change maker is when you identify a problem within your community and you try to solve it, you build a solution for that. And parallelly, as all of us across the world are experiencing, we are living in these extraordinary times where the world is sort of making this final move from being organized around repetition to being organized around change, which is actually just the opposite. We are no longer in the world where we learn a skill and we repeat it well through our life, and that's success. Success is being able to adapt to change. So now the question in front of us was, how do we make everyone in the society see this new reality where we have and society always needs role models to start acting differently. So if the goal was that every young person continuously practices to be a change maker, the first step for us was to identify role models for our young people. So at Ashoka, we believe that by identifying, supporting, inspiring teen change makers as Ashoka Young Change Makers who are working to solve a problem, we're creating new type of role models for our young people who have the potential to impact an entire generation. So our framework to identify these young change makers is very simple, which is it has to be their own idea. They should have built their own team and have achieved their own impact. So we are constantly looking for young people who want to help others get their change-making powers, and our Ashoka Young Changemakers are deeply committed to this idea. We work with this community in influencing other stakeholders of the society, such as schools, parents, and the community at large, to completely reimagine how young people are growing up. Now, with that context, I just want to kind of quickly run through what we call our framework for 4 levels of impact. So for any sort of communication or for any program, we believe that there are 4 layers of impact that can come in. One is sort of a direct service where we are working with populations to provide service, food, or a direct benefit for the well-being of a community. The second sort of level is the scaled direct service, which essentially is large numbers of people where we are providing a solution to at scale. And the third one being systems change. And, like I mentioned, we ensure our Ashoka Fellows are social entrepreneurs who have changed systems, who have bring in policy change across different countries. So this essentially is a new model that addresses the root cause of a problem. So a policy change or a widespread adoption of a specific methodology by leading organizations. For instance, microcredit is a great example, right, which both India and Bangladesh have experienced. And the fourth one, which is where Ashoka specifically looks at any sort of communication to bring in change, is framework change, which essentially is changing mindset, individual mindset at a large scale, which will ultimately change behaviors across society as a whole. So this essentially is systems change at scale, and changing mindsets and behavioral patterns is something that is very, 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 very critical for us as an organization. So we don't really work at the direct scale sort of level. We work at mindset shift, and that's what we are trying to do with Everyone a Changemaker. We are trying to change systems and mindsets to ensure that everyone is a change maker, and everyone is a contributor, everyone is a giver, and that's essentially what we are trying to do. So for us, communications is not a marketing or a support function as an organization, but what communication is for us is bringing in mindset shift at scale. And I think for any sort of program, social change program, or anything to be successful or for the greater good, it has to play at that level. It has to be at a framework change level. So that is, I just wanted to, put it out on the table before we start our Q&A and our discussion on how we look at communication, and how we look at change, whenever it comes to social change. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. And for us, any communication strategy has to talk about mindset shift. It has to talk about leveraging networks, working with many stakeholders, influencing them on how they look at change. So that's what we're doing at Ashoka. And one of the powerful ways we do that is by telling stories, and stories of Ashoka fellows, stories of Ashoka young change makers, because stories is how most people learn. Stories is how we've all learned and grown up. And they have this power of quietly encouraging people to give themselves permission to see an opportunity and turn it into a purpose, build a team around it, and bring in change. So with that, I will close, and we can come back to this, when we get to the questions.
Okay, I have never been in a conference where I was the moderator. Speakers are done before their time is up. Usually it's like you have to threaten them with death or execution in some way to get them to finally stop. So right, because you are so organized and so concise and so to the point that it really will give us a lot of opportunity afterwards for questions and discussion. So I thank you for that. The third speaker on the panel is Ms. Roshan Akhtar. Actually, this is a co-authored contribution, as I understand it, from the program with Dr. Anshala Syed, and they are from the University of Malay in Malaysia. And Roshan is going to talk about women's empowerment through strategic disobedience, a study of the role of community radio in rural Bangladesh. And I am one of the, I think, culprits that Dr. Ullah had talked about, who has done research on Bangladesh and other countries in South Asia without actually living there. But I have done some research on community radio in Bangladesh. So I'm very interested to hear from you, Roshan, what you are going to talk to us about. I think you
Good evening. Yeah. Good evening, and thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to present my study at this very prestigious conference. And I'm Roshan Akhtar. I'm pursuing my PhD from the University of Malaya, and Dr. Azlan Shah, my co-author, is my supervisor. So I'm starting my presentation. Today, my presentation topic is Women Empowerment Through Strategic Disobedience, a study of the role of community radio in rural Bangladesh. Community radio has recognized as able to give rural women voice and ensure their participation in the development projects. And all the CRs views community radio views women empowerment as one of their key objectives. So community radio started a journey in Bangladesh in 2011. Sorry, I can see it. And today, 18 community radio stations are on air in the country, aiming to ensure empowerment and the right to information for the rural community. Now it covers more than 6.1 million listeners of 29 districts, and geographically the stations are very conned and have limited airtime. The output power of community radio transmitter is 100 watt and its coverage area is 17 kilometer. The policy of community radio states to work for the empowerment of the marginalized people, especially rural women, and community radio is medium that give voice to the voiceless and grassroots people. Rural women in Bangladesh who comprise half of the total population are subordinate people, and 62% people in the Bangladesh live in rural area. Half of them are women. Among them, 77% are disempowered. These women face multifaceted domination like illiteracy, early and forced marriage, high material mortality, social religious restrictions and tortures, abandonment, and little control over their material assets, and limited job opportunities. So there are various issues within the establishment of community radio and Bangladeshi rural women, such as the impact of empowerment program as from government and donor agencies. We know that the CRs are running with the fund from the fund of the donor agencies, and it's under scrutiny of the government, and struggle to find their voices in the media and community is another issue. This study analyzed the concept of women empowerment with the lens of strategic disobedience in the context of community radio. And to understand the role of community radio in empowerment, strategic disobedience, we depend on three aspects of community radio programs: listening habits, the contribution of program, the information that helps in gaining knowledge and build confidence to empower these listeners in regards to gender inequality. In Bangladesh, government and NGOs are using community radios to broadcast information and issues prescribed by the government of Bangladesh, and their women empowerment program revolves around a few issues similar to the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and community radio concept supporters claim that community radios are proven tools for women empowerment. However, I argue in my study that by using community radio programs information, women adopt discursive ways of resistance through their persuasion and communication skills, often leveraging their understanding of the law and religion. By these ways, community radio programs plays an important role as casual knowledge hubs to protect women and build soft forms of resistance. Nevertheless, it is not a tool to instigate any direct resistance against inequalities. Strategic disobedience. Here I use the word strategic disobedience to refer as ways to avoiding any coercive conflicts in family and community. Strategic disobedience is a form of nonviolent resistance, relates to a tradition formulated by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who created the concept of nonviolent resistance, which we know as Satyagraha. The concept of strategic disobedience in this study was inspired by James Scott's concept of everyday forms of resistance that are the acts of subversion that play out amongst the oppressed and those who try to serve their interests through them. It emphasizes individual strategies to resist exploitation and adverse changes in the social relations of production. Everyday forms of resistance do not seek attention, and unlike some of the other forms of social action, they do not make any news headlines, as there is no visible conflict, coercive conflict, or violent conflict. Women in many countries avoid direct revolts or instant resistance for their safety, and several studies have shown that in many countries, women prefer to resist non-violently and maintain discursive power relations using some non-violent techniques. In this study, I found strategic disobedience as a tool for rural women to find their voice for being marginalized group in the society. This research is based on ethnometeorological approach combined with mixed data analysis. The method includes 2 months intensive observation of community power structure and position of women in family and community, 1 month in each station side, and the qualitative inquiry includes observation, interviews, and secondary data analysis. Here I used multi-level sampling, including snowball and purposive sampling. And I used semi-structured open-ended interview questions to interview 14 rural women who are volunteers and listeners of community radio, naming Radio NAF and Radio Shagorgiri. I choose these two specific Radio NAF and Radio Shagorgiri because Radio NAF is situated in a remote area where women generally have only one mass media access, that is radio, while the Radio Shagorgiri is situated in a mixed livelihood areas with a full of other media access. Secondly, Radio NAF coverage area is the most conservative region. It possesses intense patriarchal domination compared to other regions of the country. Radio Shagorgiri is mostly educated and possesses liberal beliefs. Third, I am familiar with the local language and power structure of these two students, and most importantly, due to COVID crisis, it was almost impossible to select radio stations from different parts of the country. So I concentrated in these two radio stations. If we talk about the finding of the study, I have seen that women who receive information from community radio seamlessly connect their information to the challenges they face in their day-to-day life. Following the concept and principle of strategic disobedience, I traced different non-violent resistance activities of rural Bangladeshi women through community radio programs, exposure and consumption to manipulate circumstances without attacking the patriarchal power system. For example, these women use self-help techniques to hide their disobedience. They use sweet talk technique to get their partner's consent in many issues. They sometimes engage themselves in gossip and speak bad about their partners to get other women's supports, and sometimes they boycott males' help to show their disobedience, and sometimes they use third-party family references to console their partners. Here I have some interview quotations. One of my interviewee, a housewife from Teknaf, she said that she explained how she used sweet words. Actually, she described us that she was interested to send her daughters to school, but whenever she asked her husband about that, he just shouted at him and said, "Don't advertise the radio to me." Then she decided to discuss these things with her husband when he is in a good mood, especially during their intimate time, and she succeeded. It works actually for her. She said that sweet words, sweet talks helps her to get her husband's consent in many issues.
Roshan, 1 more minute.
Okay, other interviewee also said the same things to me. And if we talk about the community radio's role to eliminate gender disparity, and we can say that despite women pitiable engagement in community radio activities as listeners, women adopt discursive voice of resistance through their persuasion and communication skills and understanding of the law and religion. And they build confidences from community radio associations, which they consider a way of empowerment, and face their counterpart in some strategic ways. In our study, we have seen that women usually spend their leisure through gossiping, mostly criticizing other family matters that Scott refers to as character assassination. Such strategic efforts may not be gradually organized or premeditated, but help women counteract their existing subordinate positions from their victim status. These actions promote the end to some degree of all discrimination against women, which supports the weak weapons of women. Their avoidance protest is a form of avoiding open confrontation, is like a specific accommodation with an existing power circuit, is also seems as strategic disobedience. It is also acknowledged that community radio plays an essential role as casual confidence building and knowledge increasing hubs to protect women through building soft form of resistance against patriarchal domination through some non-violent strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I would like to kick off our discussion by asking each of you. So each of the three of you focused in your contribution on a specific group of people. Shruti, you talked about the change makers among the youth. Dr. Ula talked about the academics and how we do research. And then Roshan talked about women in rural areas. And I want to ask you how you see through your work over the past year that COVID has specifically affected the way in which each of these three groups of people go about to do what they set out to do. I mean, Shruti, in your case, how has COVID affected young change makers in how they think about making a difference in the world? Also, how have you seen, Roshan, has COVID affected the rural women, if that was part of your research, to think about how they can go about to achieve the goals that they set for themselves in their households or in their communities? How are they thinking differently about that now? And I want you to go in the order that you have spoken, so that we just get your feedback on this question, and then we can take more questions as we go. Shruti?
Thank you for that question. I think I would just before, just in the pre-pandemic world, right? We at Ashoka have kind of noticed that there are sort of underlying forces at work, right? That all of us have been experiencing. There are income differences that are getting worse everywhere, regardless of the nature of the economy or ideology. There is an us versus them politics across the globe. Now, each country does think that these are local factors. Local factors are to be facts are universal. And the other two huge, all of us, and the extent and the degree of innovation that has been accelerating exponentially. So the demand petition has been falling since 1700. So it's no longer the world where efficiency and value came from
Okay, while we have a moment of silence there, Ula, do you want to go ahead and talk about how COVID is affecting the way we do things as researchers? And when Shruti comes back, we can have her continue. Oh, here's Shruti.
I'm so sorry. I think the internet connection is not being a good friend today. So I was saying that we are living in a world where the rate of change is exponential, and the demand for we no longer see value in efficiency and reputation. We're not looking at assembly lines or law firms anymore. We are looking at a world where value comes from contributing and adapting to change, and in an everything changing world which we have experienced in the last year, all of us have to have that ability, and one must be a change maker to play. So having said that, I think being a change maker requires sophisticated skills, which are almost the opposite of those required in the disappearing world of repetition. And in everything changing world, and in everyone a change maker world, must everywhere be organized in fluid, open team of teams sort of a structure. So what we have experienced, with our young change makers who are, in that age group of 12 and 20 and have experienced their power to bring in change, most of them had an initiative that they were working on. We have had change makers who are working on rural hygiene, to change makers who worked with prisoners and helping them get livelihoods. But each one of them, when the pandemic happened and they were not able to work on their regular sort of initiative that they were already working.
The technology is not our friend from India. Ulla, do you want to go ahead and you're muted. Ulla, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Arni. I got a question that how can we promote beyond border collaborations in media and communication research in South Asia, and what role can digital connectivity play in fostering the collaboration? In fact, the new generation, I think the third generation of media and communication researchers already started their efforts or their communication with the beyond borders. That means beyond South Asia. I think many of them are now pursuing their higher degrees in the USA. I think in Oklahoma also one of them. Those institutions, and many of them are from Australia. And you see one of our panelists, Raushan Akhtar, also studying in Kuala Lumpur. So a kind of these new generation actually try to explore themselves to come with some sort of exposure from the West and other countries. So this kind of collaboration will help them. And the new digital connectivity is really extraordinary benefit for the young generation, because the first generation always they blame that they had not enough scope to see the journals from the overseas countries. Even I myself, before 2006, I had no exposure with the International Communication Gazette, because that was the first time I saw the journal in print. So nowadays, the young generation, they can get connectivity with the New Media Society or International Gazette or Journalism Mass Communication Quarterly in a stand, and they can ask their friends who are living across the globe, then they send their article to them, so they can get some sort of exposure with this kind of research work. So I think the digital connectivity really plays some sort of collaborative approach, and also the workshop and international workshop by Ohio University or University of Miami or many other universities. I think so they got some sort of opportunities to make some sort of experience researchers, and also some sort of collaborative research with the different universities from Germany, from UK, and also from Australia and other countries. So this kind of collaboration is started already. So I think this collaboration will foster the new generation a kind of new thought they will get from this exposure, and it will help us very well. I think like Florida State University did with Pakistan.
Yeah, and I mean, this conference is another great example of getting people from all over the world together to talk about common areas of interest, in spite of where we are sitting today or what time zone we are in. So that is another example of how we can collaborate. Raushan, do you want to go back to the question about women in community radio and how COVID is affecting them in how they see things in their everyday lives?
Thank you. I conducted my field work during this COVID situation. And when I went to the villages, actually, I see they're very little aware. Very little. They think that this will not affect them. Although the community radios are broadcasting programs on COVID every day, but the women, and not only the women, actually the men and women, all are not very much aware. They are not afraid. They think this kind of disease maybe affect the people who lives in the cities. So they are safe and they are continuing their everyday life as normal lives. And when I went to a house, I saw that they are sick. They have fever, but they don't see the doctor. And when I asked to see the doctor, they said, okay, I will wait. If I face a severe problem, then I will see the doctor. Of course, I will see the doctor then. And I interviewed her with mask. And what can I do? Otherwise, I have to do my work. So I interviewed her. And another family, I saw a girl, she went for a COVID test, but didn't go for the result because she was not sick at all that time. So she said, why I should go for the result? I don't need it. So this is the situation actually there. And I got another question about what kind of awareness programs are promoted by government women's empowerment through radio. The radios, community radios programs are suggested by the government, and it is according to the sustainable development goals, and they broadcast programs on education, health, early marriage, dowry, legal aids for women, domestic violence, hygiene, and sometimes for some monetary activities like backyard farming. And they broadcast some success stories so that women should inspire to do something in their life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shruti, we have a question for you. Actually, a couple of questions, but I want to ask you about one. You talked about, now it looks like Shruti is not here. Okay. Shruti, you're back. Okay, I have a question for you. You talked about storytelling, and can you expand a little more on the role of storytelling and how we can use social media as a tool to promote storytelling in the communities that you work in with Ashoka?
Yeah. Firstly, apologies for the internet connectivity. I think we have been having farmer protests, and I'm right now in Delhi. So the network has been, the government has been disconnecting it every year, now and then. All right. So back to your question, Dr. Stein. I think one of the things that we were earlier kind of briefly I mentioned was the power of stories, right? And Ashoka Young Changemakers are these amazing, powerful stories of young people who, in their early years, in between 12 and 20, found an idea, found a problem in their community, build a solution, build a team around the solution, and have created an impact. So one of the things that we've noticed is that when we take their stories to different stakeholders across the education system, right? It could be the Ministry of Education or schools or parents or teacher groups or principal networks. They have this immense power of, their eyes light up, right? That's how powerful these stories are. And they do believe that, one thing is for us to go and tell them, talk about the power of change making, and another is to putting these stories out, and they have had this immense power. And how what we have done is we have developed this framework called Lead Young, which is essentially a library of these powerful stories in video and text format, and we've been sharing them on social media and different sort of stakeholders, and these are these short 2 to 3 minute powerful stories where the young change maker themselves talk about their journey, their change making journey, and their and how they have empowered other young people around their community. And inevitably, any other young person who has watched the story has realized that they can find that power within themselves too. And I think that's the power of stories. And we at Ashoka believe that giving other people the power to give, it's the greatest power that one can give, right? So and we've been able to do that very efficiently with storytelling. So Yeah, I think it's about finding the right way to be able to narrate their own story in their own voice in a powerful way has a potential of huge impact, and that's just been our experience. The platform doesn't really matter as much as the storytelling in itself does.
There's a follow-up question to that. What kind of possibilities do you see in terms of collaboration in this storytelling process and also in the change-making process, collaborative efforts or opportunities across different borders and in different countries? Because as we have mentioned a few times, time and space does not really play a role anymore given the technology we have. So can you talk about that a little?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I think that's a brilliant question because that's exactly what we, so we don't really call our communication as marketing and communications. We call them as framework change communication, right? And I also want to kind of quickly touch upon what Ms. Roshan was talking about, which is the civil disobedience movement or any movement. So if you look at the movements in history that we have had across the globe, right? They have never been they have included they've included every stakeholder in the process on the communication of that message of the movement, right? For instance, if we talk about the civil rights movement, right, in the United States, we have had Dr. King work with multiple stakeholders and leverage on each one of their sort of networks to be able to get that message out. So what I'm trying to essentially say is that when we talk about framework change, we talk about movements like the women's rights movement. We talk about movements like the civil rights movement, right, where we are going beyond a single stakeholder or a single sort of set of a group of people, but we're talking about everyone, and that becomes key. So that's essentially what we're trying to do. Everyone a change maker is bringing in everyone. This is, many of the things that we talk about when we talk about communication for greater good, it's universal. It's not about a particular, a community. It's about all of us, right? And the moment we do that, it's important that we work with multiple different stakeholders. We ensure that, we ensure that the message that we are trying to communicate is as much a strategic priority for every stakeholder involved as much as it is for us. And that's what we do at Ashoka as well, right? Change making is not just about contributing or changing the world. It's about, if you have the change making abilities, you become a better corporate person, or wherever you are a problem solver. So it is universal. So for us, it's very important to be able to work with every stakeholder and leverage on their networks and make them realize that this is about everyone. And I think the moment you make that shift, things change. Yeah.
Okay, my next question sort of connects with that. And I think we have lost Roshan, but the two of you can respond to that. We often think that to make change or to be able to bring about change, we need to wait for the government or big business or some form of institutionalized organization to show up at our doorsteps and say, this is the change that we will make, and this is how we are going to help you. And very often we see that this is not how it works, that change often happens from the ground up, and that governments, even though they have the power, they don't really have the power to bring about change, because sometimes these institutionalized organizations have different agendas. So I want to ask each of you to kind of talk about that a little and elaborate on how you see this change from the bottom up and how that can help, and how you've seen that can help a community. And if Roshan comes back, she can also talk about that from the women in the rural communities and the community radio station perspective. So either of you can start to just give your comments on that.
Okay, I will go first there. I think that's again a very Good question. And, we have realized that and I will talk about young people specifically because that's where a lot of my work sort of focuses on. And so in this sort of world of change, it's important that every young person practices to be change maker, right? And for us, the definition of success in education and growing up, we believe has to change. Our education has to change, right? And we all have the skills of being a change maker. It's not about institutions bringing in change. It's the ownership is on us. And I think one of the fundamentals of using communication for change, or for change rather, is the distributed ownership aspect of it, right? We cannot really have a government or certain institutions and have the ownership on them to bring in change. Each one of us has to share that because it's not possible to bring in change otherwise. And we feel that as Ashoka, we are in this amazing position to be able to see the work of our social entrepreneurs and see these patterns. And all of these patterns point towards everyone a change maker world, which essentially means that we can't really, wait for certain institutions to bring that change. So if we have to have our young people, have these change maker abilities and if we want to enable them to be able to play the new game, we have to, I will talk about this at two levels. At an individual level, firstly, I believe that the first step every adult can take is whenever a child or your daughter, typically who is around 12 years, comes to you and says that she saw a problem, is to encourage her to think about what can be done to solve the problem, right? And that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. What can you do to solve the problem? And this might happen a few times, and if we encourage that young person every time, by the third or the fourth time, the likelihood is higher that the young person will come up with an idea, and that will be her idea. And then comes the biggest challenge: don't take over. Please don't take over. Don't let any adult take over, or any teacher or anybody take over. Help them make that big jump. And once they have experienced the power of their dream, their team, and their impact, they have experienced that power for life. And this is very essential for our young people to have, to know and self-identify themselves as a change maker. And at an institutional level, we believe that we have to start by helping every school, every educational institution, every youth program, every neighborhood, every organization become an everyone a change maker place. And what that essentially means is to redefine the success of an institution on the matrix that what proportion of the young people are practicing to be change makers, how many, being problem solvers. And once we're able to do that, we will be on a completely different path for ourselves and for our coming generations. So it's about having every organization redefine what success looks like for them.
Okay. Ula, do you want to jump in? Ula, are you there? You're muted.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I am here.
Do you want to jump in with the question, or should I move to Roshan and get her input?
I think you can go for Roshan right now. Then I can ask some question maybe to her.
Roshan, I think you were gone when I asked the question, or did you hear the question about change coming from?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
It's perfectly fine. So my question was that we often think that change has to happen from the top down, and we have to wait for governments and institutions to bring about change. But we also see in many cases that it doesn't happen, and that change comes from the bottom up and from the communities themselves. Can you talk a little about the women that you have done your research among, and also the community radio stations, and how both these women and the stations play a role to bring about change in those communities?
Thank you for this wonderful question. Actually, yeah, the government think that the change will come from top to down. That's why they are controlling the community radio stations, I think, and they are scrutinizing them. And the community radio stations are broadcasting programs suggested by the government. And the programs that are closely related to the development activities of the government and the NGOs. donor agencies actually. So, but in my study, I have seen that women in Bangladesh, rural Bangladesh, they don't accept all the information they get from the community radio. Sometimes they disagree with the information that doesn't match with their culture or their religious beliefs. They don't accept that kind of information. This supports the necessary for the education and hygiene and other things. But when it comes to religion, they think they should believe in they don't accept other type of information, like government wanted to give women the same property right. But the woman said, I have my husband, and I have my sons, they will take care of me. Party. They don't support that concept because they think their religion in Islam, they don't get the property, and in Hindu religion also, they don't get property. So they think that they should not ask for same property as the son get from the father, and the daughter should not get the same amount of property. They should get half property. That's okay for them. They support the religion in that case. And I have seen that support the information they get from the community radio. They sometimes they try to give some opinion from the religion, and they said that in our country, you know that in Islam, man can marry 4 times, but in the country's law, they can get marriage only 1 time. So the woman, in this case, they support that man should not marry more than 1. But in property case, they don't demand similar amount of property from their father. So it depends actually what type of information they are getting. They decide whether they will accept it or not. If their culture, and they wear burqas and other dresses when they go, so that no one can say anything, that means they are supporting the culture. While taking the information from the community radio, they are trying to obey their culture and religious boundaries, so that they can survive here without any kind of confrontation, I can say, direct confrontation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are nearing the end of our time for the conference panel. And the title of this session was Communication for the Greater Good. And we've heard from all 3 our panelists how communication in different formats, whether that's through research or whether that is through storytelling, or that is through women talking among themselves and figuring out their challenges kind of in an informal group that they have established among themselves, or through information and education that they get through community radio programs. How each of these groups that the 3 panelists have focused on are trying to communicate and tell stories to make their environment, whether it's a small household type of environment or a community or society in general, a better place and contributing to the greater good. So I want to thank all 3 of you for your contributions. And I want to thank you, Viva, for organizing this session and for the questions that we got from the audience as well. I think it went really well, and thank you for having me on the panel as well. I wish you all the best, and I think, Rebecca, that is the end of the session then for us.